Hello! And I'm a bit late to this party. I didn't think I was going to do one of these because I didn't really think it would be my thing, and then I saw all these videos in my recommended and I felt left out, quite frankly. Nobody sent me the memo, but I'm waiting on a delivery that's really fucking late, so I can't go anywhere or do anything. And I looked up a list of the questions. I don't know who originally did it. Questions I'm using I got from booksaw42.com. It's someone's blog. They say that this challenge was started by the Earl Grey Reader on YouTube, so that is where I presume I'm getting these questions from. I'm just gonna like blast through this because I haven't put a lot of thought into it. I have this many notes, and I even mixed a bunch of them up, so there's some little arrows and everything. Sorry, spoilers. What is the best book that you've read so far in 2025? Now, I had a few selections for this because I was a bit all over the place. I've read quite a lot for school this year that really like took me by surprise. I don't know, I think I've had a better run with non-fiction and comics than I have with fiction this year, which is a bit odd, but I do have 4 things to mention. Number 1, Love in Exile by Sean Fay. Do you ever read a book and think, I better not meet this person in real life ever because I will be so fucking strange? I don't know, I just want to be a fly on her wall, man. I just thought this was incredible. She is so... her mind, I don't even know how to describe this book. You just have to read it, especially the first 2-3 essays in this collection are so life-changing. And everybody I've spoken to who has read this book, you go, oh, have you read Love in Exile? They go, oh! Mind of a generation. Genuinely, literary mind of a generation. So glad I've read this. I'm keeping this forever. Well, I'll probably get a paperback when it comes out, but only if it's in this color scheme. I feel like red and pink is quite difficult to pull off, and this is just sensational. I also want to shout out Stag Dance by Tori Peters. I don't have my copy. I gave it to someone immediately because I wanted them to read it. It's incredible. Yeah, that's a word you're going to hear quite a lot at the moment. Tori Peters is one of those writers, she and Sean Fay actually, who write about transness without an explicitly cis viewpoint in mind. The thing I really don't like about a lot of mainstream trans representation is that it's kind of cis-proofed. There's a certain amount of exposition that needs to be delivered, and there's certain amounts of stereotypes that you're not allowed to play into for it to be taken seriously, or for it not to be considered dangerous, if that makes sense. And Tori Peters, at least in Stag Dance, I've not read Detransition Baby. I know, terrible. But Stag Dance, she just does not give a fuck about that. She writes really messy, really difficult characters in a way that I'm just obsessed with. Her way of depicting transness in marginalized environments is illuminating, so incredible. The collection, Stag Dance, is, I believe, 3 novellas and a novel? Like 3 short stories and 1 larger story that's about 150 pages long, something like that, just nested in there. And Stag Dance, which is the title of the longest piece of writing in the book, absolutely blew me away. Just, like, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. Oh, life-changing, incredible, so tender, so loving, so... I don't even know. Just read it. Whatever. Read it, okay? I also want to bring up, I don't have a copy, I read it as an ebook, How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell, which is a brilliant non-fiction treatise on the attention economy and how capitalism is invading our personal lives through the avenue of technology and how we might start to be able to extricate ourselves. I know How to Do Nothing is a bit of a Marmite book. Jenny Odell is like an art lecturer, and when I was reading this book, was an art student, and her way of conveying ideas and information, I'd just been taught to understand it and absorb. I've read much worse. I think a lot of people are like, what is this, like, why does it take us so long to make one point? It's like, yeah, but she makes a lot of really cool references along the way, so I don't mind. If it's not your kind of thing, it's a bit of a slog, but it really worked for me, and it put voice to a lot of the things I was trying to enunciate about how insidious social media is. I'm now obsessed with Jenny Odell. I think she's amazing. The last fiction book I want to mention, and I almost forgot about it because I never logged it as read on my Goodreads because I just did not know how to broach reviewing it. I'm gonna have to at some point. Yes, I got a proof of The Imprint of Gladness. Yeah, this is a flex. I have not stopped thinking about this since I read it. I wanted to reread it the moment I finished it. Ocean Vuong is such a talented character writer, and he's so good at getting to the heart of what makes us human. I don't even know. The way these characters interact, he's picked a really hard done by community of people, and he's set out to demonstrate how the least well-off people will do the most to protect each other. So vivid, so beautiful. I saw a few reviews that were like, this is kind of corny. Yes! I want things to be emotionally intense to the point of being corny, and I want nothing else. I think this is sensational. This is an easy 5-star for me. On Earth Are Briefly Gorgeous is like my favorite book of all time, so it was gonna be. But I'm so glad that Ocean Vuong's writing lends itself to a work of this length. It's what? This copy at least is like just under 400 pages long, which is long for me. I'm usually a kind of literary thick, like 200-page kind of guy. I read this in like 3 days. I just could not put it down. So good. Really, really near and dear to my heart. This is probably number 1 of the year so far, but the others were definitely worth a mention. Okay, question 2. What has been your favourite sequel of the first half of the year? I can't answer that. I haven't read any sequels. I'm a standalone enjoyer. I'm sorry. I haven't read a single sequel, unless you count comics in a series that I read as a compendium, and I'm not counting that, because that would be frivolous. I'm just gonna skip over that one, I'm sorry. Number 3 is a bit difficult as well. Is there a new release that you haven't read but you're really excited to? Not really. I keep on top of like literary releases that appeal to me, and usually I just read them straight away. I have no impulse control whatsoever. If something really appeals to me, I just pick it up immediately. But I will name something that released last year that I never got around to that I was really looking forward to. A Language of Limbs by Dylan Hardcastle. Ordered a copy a while ago. I just left it at work because I didn't have the space to carry it home at the time, and it's just been there ever since. Really looking forward to it. Been an Instagram follower of Dylan Hardcastle for ages before I fully twigged that they're a writer, so that's on my list. Next question, upcoming releases. I believe in September, I found out literally this morning, Andrew Joseph White has a new book coming out! Andrew Joseph White, the man that you are. Andrew Joseph White. It's called You Weren't Meant to Be Human, which sounds fucking great. I don't know anything about it, I haven't read a synopsis. I just know that Andrew Joseph White wrote it, so I'm gonna fucking read it. That's all I gotta say for that section. Biggest disappointment of the year. Unfortunately, this one is really easy. I had a couple of things in mind until I read this book, and it blew everything out of the water. Sayaka Murata, can I call you that? What the hell was this? I'm actually so sick of talking about this book, I don't want to talk about it anymore. So I'm not going to say anything about it. No words. No thank you. What was the biggest surprise so far? Now this one, don't have my copy on me right now, but Colony by Annika Norlin. I was daunted by how long this book was, and it's a book about an off-grid colony and one person infiltrating them to work out what the hell is going on. I get antsy when stories that sound like they could genuinely be really interesting looks into non-traditional, non-nuclear community settings. I'm always iffy when that just turns into like a horror concept, and that was what I was worried Colony was going to be, because the protagonist of the book is talking about seeing these people from afar and observing their patterns of behavior, and they seem really weird, and she's kind of scared. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be like, oh my god, some people who just like decided to live on a farm together turn out to be evil, and that's not what this book was. I felt really stupid. This all sort of follows a bunch of people who are either incompatible in some way with modern life, or have found themselves at odds with it, or are burnt out to a point of near paralysis, and have, in one way or another, ended up becoming a part of this little community that lives on this farm. You start off thinking this is going to be some, oh my god, they're a cult kind of story, and by the end of it, you've just gone such a long way with all these characters, because you get the initial first impressions that the narrator, her initial thoughts as she's observing them from afar. Then you jump way back in time to pretty much all of the characters in the colony's backstories, and you get to understand in a more well-rounded way how they ended up where they ended up. By the end of the book, it does go south. You understand it not as like a warning as to what freaky communes can lead to, but you just feel like you've read a quite profound story about the human condition. It's not a failure of the system under which they live, it's a human failing of personality clashes and power imbalances. It's a very human story, despite it initially reading as though it was going to be about people defying their humanity in some way. So I really liked Colony. I was really glad I read it. Would highly recommend. Took me by surprise. What book made you cry in 2025? I've read this twice this year. That's how much. Ordinary Saints. Neve Lowen. Neve Lowen, the author that you are. This follows Jay, whose brother passed away when she was 16. We meet her when she, I believe, is in her 30s, and she's living in London, and she's gay, but her family are super hardline Irish Catholic, and the death of her brother completely obliterated any semblance of family that they could claim to harbour, really. We meet Jay in this book as her parents announce to her that they're starting the process of getting her brother Ferdia canonised as a Catholic saint. Great concept. What an execution. Oh my god. Stunning. Such a beautiful depiction of sort of queer joy in the margins. Every bit of this story rang so true. I feel like I could meet any of these characters. Her way of writing dialogue is really convincing. I don't know, that sounds like a weird thing to say, but sometimes you're reading like book dialogue and you're like, did you think about how this would sound if they read it out loud? Neve Lowen absolutely did, and it really shows, and this book is so beautiful, so touching, so moving, like a book of the year for sure, just incredible. I don't know what else to say. Stunning, she's stunning. I would be keeping this if it was a paperback. I'm giving this away and I'm gonna buy the paperback when it comes out. Yes! What is a book that made you happy in 2025? This one I struggled with only because I was gonna say Ordinary Saints, but I feel like nominating that one 2 in a row would be odd. I haven't put any comics in here because the way I interact with comics is quite different from the way I interact with books, but I couldn't think of any traditional words on paper books that would fit the books that made me happy category really so far this year. I need to up my game on that. So I thought for this one I'd pull out a couple of graphic novels. I hate the word graphic novel, whatever. I've been poisoned. Spent by Alison Bechdel. This is Alison Bechdel's new, it's like a work of autofiction where she uses herself and her partner as characters in a fictional story. This is so great. Speaks immensely to how it feels to live in 2025. Alison Bechdel is so worn down by the shitness of everything, but I also appreciate how, like, self-deprecating this is, in that she's whinging all the time about, like, how do I make a difference? Everything's going to shit, and all the people around her, all the people in her life are doing so much for their local communities, for people around them, and Alison Bechdel is doing jack shit and being like, oh god, what am I gonna do? It's such a reminder that all we can do is to do. That all we can do is to keep moving and to keep working. I also really like how this depicts queer characters, because it does play into a few stereotypes, but they're stereotypes that are absolutely based on fact in some cases, and it's never in like bad faith. It's just like so endearing in an exasperating way. Like the people living in like a queer commune who start like a polyamorous relationship, and their whole narrative was so funny to me, but in a way that never felt disparaging, which is a fine line to walk, and Alison Bechdel is so fucking clever, and I love this book, and I just wanted to wave it around and tell everybody to read it because it's really fucking good. The other one I wanted to mention for books that made me happy this year is The Chromatic Fantasy by H.A. I don't know if the author's moniker is on the cover. Oh yeah, in the bottom corner. Literally H.A. This is, first of all, one of the most beautiful specimens I have ever owned. So much of this is foiled, such a rich print, and the story is like two T4T trans boys in like a fantasy setting, just getting together and being really gay, and nothing horrendously bad ever really happens to them, and they get to be there for each other, and the illustrations are so beautiful. Like, every single page is colored so richly. I pick this up and I just look at it all the time. I just think it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I'm so glad this kind of stuff can be published. I'm so glad that this exists. The world is so beautiful and amazing, and I love it. Another creator who, if I ever met them in real life, I would have to swerve. Okay, it's the next day, my meds arrived, and then it got dark. I think I'm wearing the same shirt though, so now I'm waiting on a Wi-Fi technician to come around to this house. So this could be a 30-second clip and then we skip to tomorrow, but I think where I left off yesterday, there was one question left, which was, what are some books you're excited to read in the rest of 2025? Now, I am trying to work through my backlog of stuff at the moment, going exclusively off my physical TBR, and most of the stuff in my physical TBR is pretty old, so they're not going to be like exciting new releases, and also I'm kind of randomizing it, so this isn't necessarily a TBR, it's just like, I'd like to get around to that. I picked out 3. First of all, Nona the Ninth. If I'd already read this year, this would have been my pick for sequel, because I'm not really a fantasy reader, but someone convinced me to read Gideon the Ninth, and it changed my brain chemistry, and this has been sitting on my shelf for like a year. I'm desperate to get around to it, not least because it's massive and I would like to put it with its sisters. One thing about this series is you have no fucking clue what's going on for like 90% of the book. Everything comes together at the end and still you're a little bit like, what was that? And I remember reading Harrow and thinking, this is great, but what the fuck is going on? And even like right at the end there's a bit where, I don't know, a character opens their eyes and says, do you know who I am yet? No! So I really want to read this at some point. To be honest, me reading this is trying to manifest Alecto coming out, because the 4th book in this series, well, Alecto was supposed to be the 3rd book in the series, Alecto the 9th. Then Nona came out, as far as I can tell, like pretty much unannounced. They just announced the title of the book and everyone was like, that's not Alecto. And Alecto is billed as the 4th book in the series, but it's been set to come out since like 2 years ago. So really want to read Nona the Ninth. If a publication date for Alecto gets firmed for this year, I will read Nona the Ninth as soon as possible. Until then, the next one, I was literally just looking at the shelf and this jumped out and I thought I ought to get around to that. A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. I was picking a book to read a while ago, just entirely off mood, and I read the first page of this book and it floored me so bad that I was like, I can't deal with that right now. It's told in the lexicon of like a child, because it's a portrait of the artist as a young man, so it, like, as far as I understand, it's like a chronicle of a young life. It's all like, once upon a time, and a very good time it was, there was a moo cow coming along the road, and this moo cow that was coming along down the road met a nice little boy named Baby Taku. There's no commas, it's just a stream of consciousness almost, and it really floored me, but it sounded really funny. That I would really like to come up at some point. I also have a lovely little formatted one. I love these, I really do. Little pocket classic. Last of all, and I mean last, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about now, Heaven No Hell by Michael DeForge. There's a good handful of comics on my shelf that I do really want to get around to, but this one is the last Michael DeForge that I have easy access to that I haven't read yet. I've read Stunt, I've read Leaving Richard's Valley, I've read Familiar Face, I've read a bunch of them, and a bunch of stuff that my uni library had that I definitely wouldn't be able to get a hold of anywhere else, but I haven't got round to Heaven No Hell, which is a shame because it's so beautiful. Like, everything about this screams, I am gonna love it. I just haven't got round to it yet. So, manifesting this one for 2025. That is my prospective TBR, all things going well. That is the end of the scheduled content. I wanted to keep this as kind of brief as possible. In terms of how I feel about the reading I've done so far this year, I feel like I've been very much of a one-track mind as I've been finishing up with university. I read a lot of comics for that. I did a graphic design degree with a focus in like comics. I feel like I haven't read a lot of fiction this year. I mean, I have probably, in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of averages, I've probably read quite a lot, but usually I would have read a lot more by now. I've been pretty sidetracked by fucking my degree, ew. So I'm willing to jump back into that, but I feel like I'm at like almost like a turning point. When I finished up all my classes and my last deadline passed, I went through all of my stuff like a hurricane and got rid of a bunch of stuff I didn't want anymore. And one of the things that I did was on the walls. When I originally started putting stuff up on my walls, I would just stick anything up there. Things that had no significance to me whatsoever that I just thought looked kind of cool. It was like a month ago now, maybe, where I was looking around, I was like, I don't really like a lot of this stuff. I don't know why it's up there. It's just like for appearance's sake, or to create a feeling of things happening, I don't know. And I had tons of things to put up on the walls that I didn't have space for because my walls were so full. So I took down a bunch of posters that have been up on my walls for years and I replaced them, and it feels so much better in here. It just feels like so much more my space, and a space that I have control over, that reflects me in a much more authentic way. And I think the books on my shelves, it's not that they're not an accurate representation of me, but that I've endowed myself to such an extent that it feels difficult to move forward from there. Oh my god. That was a delivery person to deliver some batteries. And I freaked the fuck out because I thought it was going to be the Wi-Fi technician coming 40 minutes before the start of his arrival window. Okay. What was I talking about? Oh yeah. How I feel about my reading so far this year. I feel like I'm going through like almost like an audit of my stuff, and I'd like to reach a point where I feel like I have sufficiently reshaped my relationship with buying books, with owning books. It's not that I feel like I have like a buying books problem, but I'm coming to the realization that I'm someone who doesn't need a lot of things to feel fulfilled. I just need those things to be really meaningful. The ratio of the books that I own that are read to unread, I only keep books that I've read that are really important to me. So I look at that shelf and I feel a whole range of emotions, and I look at the rest of them and I feel a sense of possibility, but also a sense of dread at how many there are. And maybe that's something I should just be working through separate of like actually reading the books, but I feel good about where things are going right now. I really want to reach a point where I don't feel, this is gonna sound so fucking stupid, I know. I want to reach a point where I don't feel guilty about going to the library when I have so much stuff to get through at home, because at the moment it does feel like it's kind of a little bit in overflow. I'd like to get my books down to a level where I don't feel like if I leave them there too long the shelves are gonna collapse under them. And then I'll go to the library. How about that? I really like going out to buy a book and then starting to read it on the same day. And I just don't feel like that's a great option for me right now. And I want to get to a point where I do feel like that's an option. And I think I've been doing well in terms of going through my backlog. And I want to keep on that way. I haven't received a new book in ages that wasn't like for a very specific purpose. I haven't been buying books purely like recreationally. I've gotten some proofs and I've gotten some like charity shop finds of like old classics, but they're not, it's not an influx in the way it has been in the past. I'm not coming home every week with like a new stack. And I feel like we're doing good. And I'm very excited to see what the rest of the year holds. So yeah, it's gonna be the first time I have like a run at reading with no academic obligations on the horizon. It's gonna be the first autumn I ever spend outside of school, which is fucking crazy to me. I mean, obviously, like, since I was, like, 7 or some shit. I don't know. I can't remember when you start school. It's been a long time. The rest of the year could be really great, or I could have a total meltdown and realize I don't know what I'm doing, and then sign up for a master's. In the meantime, thank you very much for coming along. I hope, I don't know, the year has been as kind to you as it has to me. No, I don't actually. I mean, reading-wise, I've had a great time. The rest of it has been fucking awful, so pretend I never said that. Touch wood. I don't know. if you see a cool bird, draw some ASCII art and then comment it down below, please. Like and subscribe for a free iPhone 5.